Have you ever wondered if your child could vanish in the blink of an eye, right under your nose? What if your dog was the only one who knew the secret? Sarah Martinez stood at her kitchen window, her coffee growing cold in her hand. For the third time that week, her 2-year-old grandson, Tommy, had disappeared from the backyard. One moment he was there, playing in the grass. The next moment, gone, just like that. And every single time, their golden retriever, Duke, was nowhere to be found either. Sarah's daughter, Lisa, had moved back home 6 months ago after her divorce. She was working 2 jobs to get back on her feet, which meant Sarah had become Tommy's primary caregiver during the day. She took the responsibility seriously, maybe too seriously, because lately she'd been losing sleep over these disappearances. The backyard wasn't that big. It was a standard suburban lot in Phoenix, Arizona, with a 6-foot privacy fence, a small patio, and a patch of grass where Tommy loved to play with Duke. There was nowhere to hide, no gate left open, no holes in the fence, and yet Tommy kept vanishing. The first time it happened, Sarah nearly called 911. She'd stepped inside for less than 2 minutes to grab Tommy's juice cup from the refrigerator. When she came back out, he was gone. Her heart had stopped. She'd screamed his name, run around the side of the house, checked the front yard. Nothing. Then, 5 minutes later, she heard Duke barking from the back corner of the yard. She rushed over and found Tommy sitting in the grass near the fence, giggling, with Duke standing over him like a guardian.
Sarah had scolded herself for taking her eyes off him. She'd promised to be more vigilant, but it happened again 2 days later. This time, she'd only glanced down at her phone for a text message, 30 seconds tops. When she looked up, Tommy and Duke were both gone. She'd found them in the same spot, near the back fence, with Tommy laughing and Duke wagging his tail. Now it had happened a 3rd time, and Sarah was starting to feel like she was losing her mind. Was she blacking out? Was there something medically wrong with her? She was 72 years old, and while her doctor said she was healthy for her age, maybe this was an early sign of something serious. She walked outside, determined to figure this out. Tommy was playing with his toy truck on the patio, and Duke was lying beside him in the shade. Sarah pulled up a lawn chair and sat down, her eyes fixed on her grandson. She wouldn't look away, not this time, not for anything. 10 minutes passed. 15. Tommy drove his truck around in circles, making engine noises. Duke's tail thumped against the concrete. Everything was normal. Sarah felt her shoulders start to relax. Then Duke's ears perked up. The dog lifted his head, looking toward the back fence. His tail began to wag faster. Before Sarah could react, Duke stood up and trotted toward the corner of the yard. And Tommy, as if responding to some invisible signal, abandoned his truck and toddled after the dog. Sarah jumped to her feet. "Tommy, stay where Grandma can see you." But Tommy kept walking, his little legs moving with surprising determination. Sarah hurried across the yard, her knees protesting with each step. By the time she reached the back corner, Tommy was crouched down near the fence, and Duke was standing beside him, his tail wagging so hard his whole body shook.
And that's when Sarah saw it. A small gap at the bottom of the fence where the wood had rotted and pulled away from the ground. The gap was maybe 8 inches wide and 4 inches tall, barely noticeable unless you were looking right at it. Tommy couldn't fit through it, but something else could. Sarah knelt down, her joints creaking. She peered through the gap and gasped. On the other side of the fence was Mrs. Chen's yard, and there, pressed up against the fence from the other side, was the smallest, fluffiest white puppy Sarah had ever seen. Its tiny pink tongue was sticking out, and its tail was wagging frantically. Tommy reached his little hand through the gap, and the puppy licked his fingers. The toddler erupted in delighted giggles. Duke sat beside them, his tail still wagging, looking enormously pleased with himself. Sarah sat back on her heels, her hand over her heart. This was it. This was the secret. Tommy hadn't been disappearing, he'd been visiting a puppy, and Duke had been showing him the way. Before you think this mystery is solved, stay with me, because Sarah was about to discover something that would change everything. And if you're enjoying this story, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps us bring you more true stories like this one. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Sarah stood up and walked to the side gate, letting herself into Mrs. Chen's yard. She'd lived next door to Margaret Chen for 15 years, but they'd only exchanged pleasantries. Mrs. Chen was a widow in her mid-80s who kept mostly to herself. Sarah found Mrs. Chen sitting on her back porch, watching the puppy with a sad smile on her face. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea Tommy was bothering you through the fence." Mrs. Chen looked up, and Sarah was surprised to see tears in her neighbor's eyes. "Bothering me? Oh, no, dear. That little boy has been the highlight of my week." Sarah sat down on the porch step. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Chen's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. 3 weeks ago, I found this puppy abandoned in a box at the grocery store parking lot. I brought her home, even though I know I shouldn't have. I'm too old to take care of a dog properly. My children keep telling me I need to go into assisted living. They say I can't manage on my own anymore." Her voice cracked. "But I've been so lonely since Harold passed. This little puppy made me feel alive again, made me feel needed." Sarah's throat tightened. "Why didn't you keep her?" "My daughter is coming this weekend to take me to look at facilities. She made it very clear that I can't bring a dog with me. I called the shelter yesterday. They're coming to pick her up tomorrow morning. I've been saying goodbye." Sarah looked at the puppy, who had squeezed herself partially under the fence and was trying to reach Tommy's fingers again. Duke had his nose pressed to the gap, sniffing the little white fluff ball with gentle interest. An idea formed in Sarah's mind, a crazy idea. Lisa would think she'd lost it, but sometimes the craziest ideas were the best ones. "Mrs. Chen," Sarah said slowly, "what if you didn't have to say goodbye? What if you could visit her every day, see her play and grow?" Mrs. Chen looked confused. "I don't understand." "What if we adopted her, my family? She could live in our yard, right on the other side of this fence. You could come over any time, or we could bring her to visit you. Tommy clearly adores her already, and Duke has apparently been playing matchmaker this whole time." Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. "You would do that?" "More than that," Sarah said, her mind racing now. "You could help me take care of her. Teach me what you've learned these past few weeks. I'm 72, and I've been feeling pretty useless lately, to be honest. Like I'm just waiting around to get old. But watching Tommy with this puppy, seeing how happy she makes you, maybe we could both use a little more purpose in our lives." For a moment, Mrs. Chen just stared at her. Then she started to cry in earnest, but she was smiling too. "I would love that. I would absolutely love that." Sarah called Lisa that evening and explained the situation. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Mom," Lisa finally said, "you're 72 years old. You want to adopt a puppy?" "I want to give Tommy a companion," Sarah corrected, "and I want to help our neighbor. And maybe, just maybe, I want to prove to myself that I'm not too old to do something spontaneous and joyful." Lisa laughed. It was the first real laugh Sarah had heard from her daughter in months. "You know what? Why not? Tommy loves dogs, and heaven knows he's attached to Duke. When can I meet this puppy?" The next morning, Sarah called the shelter and told them the puppy had found a home. Mrs. Chen came over with the little white fluff ball, who Tommy immediately named Snowball. Duke greeted his new little sister with patient dignity, and within an hour all three of them were playing together in the backyard. Sarah had one of the handymen from her church come out and fix the gap in the fence, but she had him cut a small window higher up with a secure latch so Mrs. Chen could open it and watch the dogs play whenever she wanted. They installed a gate in the fence too, so Mrs. Chen could come and go easily.
In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Chen started coming over every day. She'd help Tommy with Tommy, sharing stories from when she'd raised her own children. The two women began cooking together, combining their recipes and their wisdom. Mrs. Chen taught Tommy simple words in Mandarin. Sarah taught Mrs. Chen how to use FaceTime so she could video call her grandchildren more often. When Mrs. Chen's daughter came to visit and saw her mother laughing, playing with a toddler and two dogs, looking more vibrant than she had in years, she quietly dropped the conversation about assisted living. Sarah's own daughter noticed the change too. "Mom," Lisa said one evening, "you seem different, happier." Sarah smiled, watching Tommy toddle across the yard with Snowball yipping at his heels and Duke walking protectively beside them both. "I was so worried about Tommy disappearing, but he wasn't disappearing at all. He was discovering, and in the process, he led me to discover something too." "What's that?" "That sometimes the things we think we've lost, the purpose we think is gone, it's not really lost at all. It's just waiting on the other side of a fence if we're willing to look through the gap." Lisa hugged her mother. "I'm glad you looked." "Me too," Sarah said. "Me too." From that day forward, Sarah never worried about Tommy disappearing in the backyard, because she understood now that Duke hadn't been letting Tommy wander off. He'd been leading him to exactly where he needed to be. Dogs have a way of knowing things like that. They understand that sometimes the best discoveries happen when we follow our curiosity, even through the smallest openings.
Mrs. Chen lived next door for 5 more years, spending almost every day with Sarah, Tommy, and the dogs. She was there for Tommy's first day of kindergarten. She taught him to count to 10 in Mandarin, and every single day she'd open that little window in the fence and watch Snowball play, knowing that this little puppy hadn't just found a home. She'd connected 2 lonely people and given them both a reason to wake up excited every morning. The mystery of the disappearing toddler turned out to be no mystery at all. It was just the beginning of something beautiful. And it all started because one very smart dog knew exactly what his family needed even before they did. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had a pet that seemed to know exactly what you needed? Share your story below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.